This morning, as we look at Genesis 20 together, we're asking this question. How do God's people think of those who are living a better life than they are? Can we pray for them? Can we share the good news of Jesus with them? So far, we've seen Abram failing again. Let's notice now very quickly that Abimelech's better than Abram. We can deal with this quickly because it's so very apparent in the text. There's absolutely no doubt who's the morally superior character in this story. It's not Abraham. It's not the man of God. It's Abimelech, king of Gerar. Throughout the whole account, he doesn't put a foot wrong. When he takes Sarah into his harem, he's just doing the normal thing that powerful men did in those times. He had no idea that she was married. When God appears to him in a dream, we find that he's respectful of God. He listens to God, and then he explains that he's been acting with a clear conscience and clean hands. In fact, if you look at verse 6, you'll see that God regards him as innocent. God says, "Yes, I know you did this with a clear conscience, and so I've kept you from sinning against me. That is why I didn't let you touch her." When God tells him to return Sarah to Abram, he obeys. He not only returns Sarah, he gives Abram generous gifts, and he offers him to live anywhere he would like in his land. It's remarkable. At the very moment when Abram, the man of God, the friend of God, is dealing without any integrity at all, pagan Abimelech, king of Gerar, is acting with great integrity. Abimelech really is better than Abraham. So, Abram's failing again. Abimelech's better than Abraham. But thirdly, as we read this story, we need to see that Abimelech needs God's grace. Reading the story would be tempted to say, Abimelech doesn't need God. He's good already. And we might be tempted to think, given how the events have unfolded, surely Abram is not the guy to bring any message from God to Abimelech. On both accounts, we're going to be surprised. We're going to see that Abimelech needs God's grace. Abimelech needs prayer. God tells him, verse 7, after showing him the danger that he was in with Sarah, God says, "Now return the man's wife, for he's a prophet, and he'll pray for you, and you'll live." This is the first time that the word prophet is used in the whole Bible. And Abram's experience here offers us some insights into what it might mean. A prophet, like Abram in this passage, is one who's privileged to stand before God, one to whom God speaks, and thirdly, one whose prayers God hears. It's incredible to think that despite how Abram's been behaving, God would still privilege him with a role like that. Such is the grace of our God. Abimelech needs God's grace. He needs Abram to pray for him. And we read actually way at the end of the passage, verse 17, that Abram did. Then Abram prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife and his slave girls, so that they could have children again. We can't escape the implications here. God has brought healing to the moral Abimelech through the prayers of the faithless and deceptive and immoral Abraham. God seems to be willing to work in this sinful world through sinful people and to allow them to be agents of his grace. Just as he was willing to use a failing Abraham, so we can expect that he'll be willing to use failing people like us. Just before we finish this morning, I want to take a moment to go a little bit deeper here and explain why it is that we need to share the gospel and we need to pray for people who don't yet know God, no matter how moral their lives appear to be. The reason's actually quite simple. It's because life in the end isn't about being good or about being better. It's not about being nice or nicer. It's about being in a right relationship with God, who created us. You see, there can be something terribly wrong even with so-called good people. Tim Keller helped me to see this with a very simple but profound illustration. He said, imagine a widow, a poor widow with an only son. She teaches him how she wants him to live, to always tell the truth, to work hard, and to help poor people. In the meantime, she has very little by way of money or wealth. Whatever she has, she uses to raise her son, to put him through university, to give him the best opportunities in life. Wind forward now a few years to imagine this young son has grown into a man. He lives just the way his mother taught him. He's honest. He works hard. He's charitable. He helps people in the face of global pandemics. But here's the heartbreaking truth. He doesn't speak to his mum. He'll occasionally send her a Christmas card, but he doesn't visit her. He doesn't answer her phone calls or her letters. He doesn't speak to his mum. What would you make of that? Does that seem okay? Of course not. It doesn't matter how good a life a person is living if they ignore the very person who gave them that life, the person who sacrificed everything for them, the one to whom they owe it all. Do you see it now? Every human being on the planet is in that kind of relationship with God. He has given us life. In Jesus, God has sacrificed everything for us. We owe our all to him. Living a good life on our own terms or by our own definitions, it's not enough. We all owe a debt to our Creator. So we finish here as we started this morning with our question. Can we pray for people who are better than us? Yes, we can. And we must. Can we share the gospel with people whose morality eclipses ours? Yes, we can. And we must. You see, life's not about being good. Life's about being in a right relationship with God. This last couple of weeks on our journey with Abraham, we've learned a lot about how to think about people who don't yet know God. We've been to sinful Sodom and we've met moral Abimelech. We have learned that no matter how sinful our neighbor is, we can plead with God that they might experience his grace. We've learned that no matter how moral our neighbor is, we can pray for them that God will draw them into a right relationship with him. Let's take a moment to pray together just now.